Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Marketing Mindsets. We haven't been around for quite a bit because the past couple of weeks have had teeth, but we've managed to come back. So we are back. And this week we are examining the new rules of marketing and PR by David Meerman Scott, who created an influential book that has reshaped how organizations approach digital marketing since its first publication in 2007. So, for those that don't know, I am the host, Ntabi Singh. I want to start this week's episode by asking two questions, which I hope that this book will answer. One is, how did a single book sell over 400,000 copies and become required reading in university marketing programs worldwide? The second one is, what made its principles so enduring that they remain relevant through nearly 2 decades of digital evolution? So I want to unpack the book and hopefully be able to answer these two questions. Before this book, marketing and PR operated as separate disciplines with clear boundaries. So at that time, companies relied on expensive advertising campaigns and relationships that they had established with media gatekeepers. And they had hoped that the press releases that go out would catch the attention that is required. So at that time, the internet was viewed simply as another channel for traditional tactics. So Scott challenged this entire paradigm. So he recognized that digital technologies weren't just new tools for old strategies, but that they represented a fundamental shift in how organizations could communicate directly with their audiences. So his book, when published, really arrived at the right time because businesses were struggling to understand platforms like blogs at the time or early social media. So, what made his approach impactful was that companies of any size could bypass the traditional gatekeepers and actually speak directly to their markets using content as currency in the attention economy. At the center of this book is a framework that redefined marketing and PR for the digital age. And the framework is as such. There was direct audience communication, which meant bypassing media intermediaries to communicate with customers. There was content driven engagement, which is creating valuable information instead of interruption based marketing. There was real time relevance, which is responding to market changes as they happen, not according to campaign calendars. There was authenticity over polished, which was really prioritizing genuine communication over perfectly crafted messaging. And that is still relevant. And then there's niche targeting, which is reaching specific audiences with tailored content rather than broadcasting broadly, which is like spray and pray. And then lastly, the relationship building, which was focusing on long term connections rather than transactional marketing. So these principles created a roadmap for businesses navigating unfamiliar digital territory or terrain, right? Which offered concrete strategies that could be implemented immediately. So, looking at these principles and trying to apply them to the South African context, I've got about 4 examples that I want to share. And the first one is Zulzi, which is the on demand grocery delivery app. And this app exemplifies direct audience connection by creating personalized shopping experiences and real time delivery updates that connect customers directly with local stores. The second one is SweepSouth, which has leveraged content driven engagement through their educational resources for both domestic workers and homeowners, therefore building trust in a traditionally offline industry. The third one is Yoco. And Yoco has built its payment solution business by focusing on niche targeting, creating specialized content for small merchants previously overlooked by traditional payment providers. And lastly is SnapScan, which has demonstrated authentic engagement through its community focused approach to digital payments, therefore prioritizing user stories over technical specifications. So these organizations aren't just using digital tools, they're fundamentally rethinking audience relationships and therefore applying Scott's principles in a unique South African context. A few weeks ago, we looked at Made to Stick by the Heath brothers. So I want to compare their principles around marketing and communication with this week's read, The New Rules. Made to Stick focuses on creating memorable messages regardless of the medium that is used, whereas New Rules concentrates specifically on digital channel strategy and direct audience relationship. Again, Made to Stick asks, how can we ensure our message is remembered? While the New Rules ask, how can we reach our audience directly? And then lastly, the Heath brothers provide a psychological framework for message creation, whereas Scott offers a practical roadmap for digital channel utilization. So these frameworks complement each other beautifully, in a sense that Made to Stick helps you craft memorable content, while the New Rules guides you in delivering that content directly to your audience through digital channels. We've gone through the principles of the New Rules. We've compared them to previous literature. So now the question would be, how do we apply these principles? And they're key steps. So I've got 6 steps, key steps in which you can follow to apply them. So it's a buyer persona development. What that means is, who exactly are you trying to reach? And the second one would be the content strategy creation. What valuable information can you offer this audience? And then channel selection. So which digital platforms do your personas actually use? And then real-time monitoring. How will you track conversations about your brand and industry? The fifth one is engagement protocols. And that means how quickly and authentically will you respond to audience interactions? And lastly, measurement framework. I think this is important because you're not just doing things for the sake of doing things. So which metrics truly indicate relationship building and not just visibility? So let's take a practical example. As previously stated, traditionally, companies would rely on press releases. So if we look at this case, instead of utilizing press release methodology, how about a company develops its own informative blog post, it produces its own video, and engages with relevant communities within its online platforms, therefore enabling it to engage directly with its customers without really relying on media intermediaries. So, as with anything, all these principles sound feasible and easily applicable. However, as with anything in life, there are some challenges that have been identified, which one has to consider. But with that, I think I would like to preface that because this publication was released in 2007, Scott subsequently released other books which have addressed these challenges. So the first one that we identified is the issue of the data protection laws, which have complicated personalized marketing approaches. The second one is that of platform changes that can dramatically affect visibility regardless of the quality of the content you have. And then the third one is also acknowledging that the consistent creation of content requires significant investments. And then the fourth one is the more organizations adopt the content marketing approach, the more noise that is created and the more need required to break through the noise. So, with all these discussions and application, consideration, comparisons, obviously one has to ask themselves, what does this book, The New Rules, mean for South African markets moving forward? And the simple answer is that the framework continues to evolve in our unique, challenging environment. And these are the considerations to make from a relevance perspective. And the first one is that in our data constrained market, the principles help businesses create effective digital strategies despite Wi-Fi or bandwidth limitations. And for our diverse population, the niche targeting approach offers ways to connect meaningfully with specific cultural and linguistic groups. It's also important to consider that emerging players like Lyft Airlines are showing how direct audience engagement can disrupt established industries. And lastly, which I think is also quite topical right now, is township-focused platforms like Swipe and Gasimenu demonstrate how hyper-local digital strategies can succeed in previously underserved markets. As our digital landscape continues to develop, the fundamental principles of this book remain applicable, even as specific platforms and technologies change. David Meerman Scott's lasting contribution reminds us that effective marketing and PR in the digital age really isn't about shouting louder or spending more, but really about creating genuine and authentic value for specific audiences, therefore building relationships over time. I think what digital marketing should consistently remind us of is that, as with nature or the natural way of doing things, developing relationships take time and they require investment. And by investment, I don't necessarily mean that you can buy somebody's affection or following, but that you need to put into it and show how invested you are in the relationship. And the same principles from a digital utilization perspective should apply. So with that, our episode has come to an end. Please join us next week as we explore Crush It. And yeah, have a wonderful week ahead and enjoy your weekend. Bye.